Hey, welcome back, Infusers. This is our second podcast, and we have a great one for you today, especially if you are a perfectionist or have perfectionism tendencies. Why will this be a great podcast for you, you ask? Because we're discussing progress over perfection. So many of us are afraid to move forward on an idea because we don't think it's perfect. We don't want to be embarrassed because we haven't figured everything out yet, or because 10,000 other people have already done it and done it better, or we don't have the right funding or enough time or the right people, or you fill in the blank. As a result, we either never start at all, or even worse, we start, spend a lot of time, effort, money, and then never reveal it to the world because we're afraid of judgment or criticism. But imagine what type of world this would be if we all waited for the perfect product. Nothing would ever happen. The Wright brothers wouldn't have invented the airplane. Carl Benz wouldn't have created cars. Apple wouldn't have rolled out the iPhone. Anybody remember the first versions of a mobile telephone? And even more importantly, Post would not have created Fruity Pebbles. There had to be a string of imperfection to eventually land on something great. The Wright brothers, for instance, failed literally hundreds of times during the process of inventing the airplane. And trust me, you wouldn't want to fly across the country in one of those first babies. Carl Benz spent years developing the first car and it sucked. It couldn't steer or brake or climb hills. In fact, in one of his first public demonstrations, the thing crashed into a wall in front of everybody. And what could be a better example than kids? Seriously, having kids is completely about progress over perfection, and that's every day. A lot of times it's even minute by minute. There's no way we can become a perfect parent before we have kids. We just have them and then try to figure it out. And as any parent knows, there's no such thing as a perfect parent, even with all the information out there today. I know in my case, I read extensively as soon as I knew I was pregnant. I took parenting classes. I saw therapists. I watched a gazillion parenting videos. And still to this day, every day, I fail to be a perfect parent. But guess what? My kids are still alive. Even in my own life, I've been terrified of taking action many times because I'll think of all the ways I could fail, all the obstacles that would prevent me from success. Some people call this analysis paralysis. You're so busy analyzing all the ways you can fail that you're just paralyzed into inaction. One example of this in my life is triathlon. Doing triathlons makes me feel tough, proud, successful, fit. I had done a few mini triathlons in college, but then I became sedentary during medical school. And at a certain point, I just figured it was a pipe dream. I mean, I'd always wanted to do the Ironman Hawaii, but I would tell myself, I'm overweight, I'm out of shape, I'm no athlete, much less a triathlete. Then a few years ago, I embraced progress over perfection and I started to train. And you know what? It was a piece of cake, and I entered the Ironman Hawaii and I won it. Psych! Of course not. It is never perfect. A few months into training, my bike flipped over. I went headfirst towards the concrete and I got seriously injured. I haven't even been able to ride a racing bike since, and that's been probably 4 years now. My knee would hurt when I ran. But you know what? I really wanted to be a triathlete. So I swallowed my pride and I decided to start small. I got a bike that I could ride where I didn't have as much back pain, and I didn't sweat it when I had to walk instead of run. I looked around and I found a tiny triathlon, which was only a 100-meter swim, a 3-mile bike, and a 1-mile run. And you know what? I did it. And it was far from perfect. The 100-meter swim was in a freezing cold lake. So I had to learn how to swim in a wetsuit. And during the race, when I got out of the water, I was so dizzy I could barely walk, much less run. I did manage to get to my bike and I rode my quote non-racing bike end quote like a champ. And even though the run was only 1 mile, I walked half of it. But you know what? I have never been as happy or proud or felt as successful after a race than I felt that day. It is still one of my proudest accomplishments. I encouraged myself and it propelled me forward. And 6 months later, I did a longer triathlon. I was able to swim a half mile in a freezing cold ocean. I didn't get dizzy. I rode the bike 12 miles and I did the 3 mile run. And again, it wasn't perfect. I had to walk my bike up a steep hill and I had to walk half of the 3 miles. But you know what? That was progress over perfection big time. I was a triathlete. Of course, I'm not Ironman status here. I mean, I did a tiny little triathlon, but I feel like a champion nonetheless. And now, with a new business sprouting up, it's progress over perfection every day. If you don't believe me, just take a look at my website, infuseyourfuture.com. It's full of imperfection. I even cringed to ask you to visit it and thought about leaving it out of the podcast because there's just so much I hate about it, so much I want to change and improve. But you know what? It looks a lot better than it did in the beginning. And the things I put out there now are better than they were a few months ago. And a few months from now, what I put out there will be better than it is today. Nobody can get to the top of the mountain without putting one step in front of the other, tripping a few times, sliding in a few places, getting a little earth and mud on them. The point is, until there's a first version, there's never a perfect version. You have to start, evaluate, test, and revise. After completing that sequence hundreds of times, well, honestly, it's still going to be imperfect and capable of an upgrade, but it's going to be awesome. As long as we can continue to learn, pivot when needed, embrace challenges, and have fun in the process, eventually we'll create our own special something. So, here's my call to action. What is something you've really wanted to do or create in your life that's been stopped in its tracks by perfectionism? Write that down, unless, of course, you're driving or doing something important, because you can always write it later. Then, what is one small step you can take today that will get you one step closer to that desire? Write that down, again, when it's safe. Now, go do it today. Repeat this process every single day and see where you are in a year. And if you're interested in sharing, please do so. You never know who you're going to inspire. So, thanks for listening. If you like this podcast or want to support my journey, please share it with people you know. And don't forget to follow us by hitting the button below so you don't miss out on upcoming episodes. And as always, let us know in the comments below, how are you infusing your future? Talk soon. Bye.